everyone's doing well. I've lost track as to how many weeks this whole thing has been going on for. All I know is I'm bored and I need to do something different because every day is starting to feel exactly the same. It's like this endless Groundhog's Day sort of thing that's been going on, and I'm sure everyone is feeling exactly the same way I am. I've moved to New Jersey, settling in, unpacking, getting myself organized. New York has been my home for a while, and it's kind of bittersweet to be leaving. Still have a lot of good friends there, but I'm only about 40 minutes away, so it's also nice out here. And I also have a lot of great friends here in New Jersey, the Garden State. Before we get going, I want to shout out Portland Distro, and it's a t-shirt company. If you're into hardcore punk and like horror t-shirts, check out Portland Distro online. And the URL is exactly what you would think it would be, portlanddistro.com. Check it out. So what have I been doing with my time besides working? I got this piece on integrity that I'm wrapping up that's going to appear in a forthcoming magazine to be published by Holy Mountain. And Holy Mountain is another t-shirt and merch company. They do all the Tombs merch. They do Integrity. They do Leviathan, Ringworm, a lot of really cool bands. And holymountainprinting.com if you want to go check that stuff out. I'm going to be doing a movie podcast with Jeff Coxside this weekend. So that's I'll tell you guys about the movies that we've both collectively been watching. I saw some really good ones recently. I caught The Lodge, which features Riley Keough, one of my favorite actresses. Yeah, it was a really good movie. Very dark, very moody. And Jeff and I will be discussing that over the weekend. And that episode will be coming at you guys next week. I'd also like to thank my buddy Mateo for sending the Caveira LP and t-shirt. And that's a band I talked about a couple episodes ago. And some of you out there were interested, and they're great. Check them out on Bandcamp. That's Caveira with a K, not a C, in case you're interested in that. LP sounds great. Sanford Parker is the producer on that. And I've worked with Sanford on All Empires Fall several years ago, the Tombs EP that we did. And Sanford is a top recording engineer, producer, and a really cool guy. So I cannot say enough good things about Caveira. It's if you like that sort of minor, doomy metal with like a brooding kind of vibe, definitely check them out. It's like, a little bit of I would say a Buzz Oven vibe mixed with Today Is the Day. And that pretty much is a fair assessment, I think, of like what they sound like. And I'm really looking forward to checking them out live someday, because I know that eventually we're all going to be getting back to rocking. I finished reading The Reddening by Adam Neville. Great book. Very good ending to it. And I ordered a collection of his short stories, which just arrived yesterday. But in the meanwhile, before I start that, I read I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. And that's a book that I figured that I should have read that years ago when I was a kid. But I don't know, it eluded me. So during this lockdown, I took the opportunity to order a copy of that book and read it. Turns out the story itself is only about 170 pages long, so it's a novella, to be exact. Technically, it's a novella. And the book was 300 pages long, so I'm reading the book. We're coming to the end, and I'm like, what the hell's going to happen next? And the book ends at page 170. Or the story ends at 170, and the next chapter is a short story. So you get a really good deal with this book. Apparently, you get the novella plus a bunch of short stories. They didn't say anything about that when I bought it, so interesting. Another fun fact about this is there's a short story called "The Prey," and as I was reading it, I'm like, wow, this plot seems familiar, and I don't know if any of you guys out there who are not familiar with Richard Matheson. He is a writer, obviously, writes fiction, but he's also very prolific in screenplays, and he's done a bunch of movies and TV and stuff like that. And it turns out that there was a 1975 ABC Movie of the Week starring Karen Black that's called Trilogy of Terror. And I remember seeing this years ago when I was a kid, and it like disturbed me. It was back then, like TV, was like regular television would oftentimes have these things. I think People Under the Stairs was another TV movie that scared me too. So anyway, it's Trilogy of Terror is just that. It's 3 stories. Karen Black stars in all 3 of them, and the last installment of that trilogy is a story called Amelia. And The Prey is the short story that chapter of the trilogy was based on. And apparently Matheson wrote all 3 of the stories. And it features the Zuni fetish doll, which comes to life and terrorizes Karen Black. And I don't know, it was pretty trippy. It was cool. In The Prey, the short story, the doll is called He Who Kills. That's pretty sick, I think. He Who Kills. That might be the name of my next band, actually. So I'll keep an eye out for that, too. Listening to a lot of music lately. Jackie Smits from the podcast Into the Necrosphere. I was actually on that show twice. I found out about this band called Elysian Blaze on his Instagram account. So shout out to Jackie for turning me on to that. It was inadvertently turning me on to that just through his Instagram feed. But Elysian Blaze, Blood Geometry is their most recent record, but that came out like 8 years ago. And it's a one-man, I would say, atmospheric black metal, doomy atmospheric black metal project from Australia. And I've been listening to it nonstop for like the last 3 or 4 days, and it's really good. So if you're a fan of that kind of thing, it's very unique. There's a lot of different things going on in Elysian Blaze, and I've checked out all their other records too, but this Blood Geometry record is a masterpiece in my opinion, and it took me 8 years to catch up to it. So yeah, if it wasn't for Jackie Smits, I would never even have known about this band probably, because within 8 years you'd figure that I would have it would have come across my radar, but it didn't. And like I mentioned earlier, trying to wrap up this piece on integrity. And as a result, I've been listening to a ton of their records. And then there's some peripheral bands out there that, I always associate with them, and Gehenna being one of them. So I've been listening to a lot of Gehenna lately. And, in doing some research, I came across an article that Neil Jameson wrote from Krieg, and he kind of breaks down a bunch of these like kind of dark hardcore bands, and he wrote about this band called The Banner, and I was familiar with the name, but I just figured they were like some like little kid band that probably were really into Converge or something like that, and something that I really wouldn't be into. So I never really checked them out. And then Neil wrote about it, and the way he described it, it made it sound like something that I'd be really into. There's like almost like a Killing Joke vibe to it, and that immediately caught my attention because I'm a huge Killing Joke fan, and I'm really into that whole post punk, like dark goth rock, death rock kind of stuff, industrial music. So he was saying all the right things in the article. So I checked out this record called Graying, and it was pretty much everything that Neil had discussed in his article. It was this brooding, dark, evil sounding hardcore music. And so I've been listening to that record quite a bit. And so Integrity, Gehenna, Elysian Blaze, these are all, The Banner, these are all things that have been on my radar. And on like a different sort of trip, there's a band called the Black Heart Procession, which probably not the best music to listen to while you're sitting alone, quarantined. But they've always been one of my favorite bands. And I've been listening to a lot of them, and particularly the record 3. And interesting story about me and my involvement with the Black Heart Procession. Back in the late 90s, when I was living in Boston, there was a brief period of time where I was trying to be a sound man, and I was working a gig at the Middle East upstairs, and the Black Heart Procession were playing there the night that I worked, and I'd never heard of them before. I mean, this is like, probably it's got to be like 1998, 1997, something like that. And they were very much still like on the periphery of things back then. So I showed up to the gig. There was a bunch of local bands that had played, and it was I think it was a weeknight too. So it was like a real quiet night. It was like a Monday or Tuesday, and bunch of local bands. None of them sounded anything alike. So I'm doing my thing, mixing, trying to do the best I can, and then the last band takes the stage, and that's the Black Heart Procession, and it's like just 2 guys. And I was like, oh, this should be easy. It's just like a guy with an acoustic guitar and a dude with this saw, that he's playing this musical saw thing. And I was totally blown away by it. It was dark, acoustic, with like this weird saw instrument being played. And I was pretty much blown away by what I'd heard. And afterwards I asked him, I thought they were from Boston. I thought they were just like some band from actually I didn't think they were from Boston. I thought they might have been from Providence, from Rhode Island, because they had this kind of artsy look about them. And that was, that vibe is more of like a Providence, Rhode Island kind of art school thing. And that's what I thought, they might have been from Rhode Island or something. But the guy was like, oh, we're from San Diego, and we only have this like 7-inch for sale. And unfortunately, I did not buy that 7-inch, which is kind of a funny thing. I probably should have, but I didn't. Anyway, back then, there was very little stuff to be done with ATM cards at gigs. You kind of had to have cash. So I might not have had cash on me. Who knows what the deal is? You know what I mean? So anyway, that was my introduction to the Black Heart Procession. And years later, they were just everywhere. Everyone was like into them. Everyone had known about them, and they were pretty big band at that point. Also, I've always been a huge fan of Neil Young. I thought Neil Young was kind of the first noise guitar player. Hendrix and Neil Young, though completely different stylistically, I think both of those artists informed bands like Sonic Youth, I think. And I'm not even a Sonic Youth fan, really. I think that maybe they have like maybe 2 records that I like, and the rest of it I think is kind of like rehashing the same tricks that they pull on every song. And the coolest thing about the band is Kim Gordon. And other than that, they've never had a good drummer. I don't think that Thurston Moore or Lee Ronaldo can play guitar. And I think that their whole thing is like this kind of gag. It's like this trick that they do with these tunings and all this stuff. So, I mean, they've been a band for about 30 years playing their instruments. They should have figured out how to play by now. So, anyway, I think they wouldn't exist without Neil Young and Jimi Hendrix. And I've always admired the way that Neil Young has been able to do pretty much all styles of music. I mean, he's got the quiet acoustic stuff. He's got the heavy rock, bluesy stuff, the kind of desert sounding Dead Man soundtrack, reverb guitar kind of thing, which I love that record in particular. The Dead Man score is amazing. And but recently I've been listening to Harvest Moon, which is just a collection of sad songs and played on acoustic guitar primarily. And the other great record is Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. And that's goes down as one of the all-time greatest record titles in history, in my opinion. I remember when I was like a young kid, just getting into rock music, discovering Neil Young, and I was listening to Zeppelin, Rush, AC/DC, like stuff like that. And initially, Neil Young wasn't something that I really dug as a young kid. I wanted to listen to Sabbath and Zeppelin and that, and everyone, the older kids were like, "Oh, you got to check out Neil Young." I'm like, this guy's got a weird voice. His guitar playing's kind of, different. And I wasn't sure how much I dug it or not. But then it was when I heard Cinnamon Girl that it really sunk in. Like, I always thought that was like such a great song. And so, my allowance for mowing lawns, I went out and I ended up buying Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. And because it had Cinnamon Girl on that record. And it was like, what a great title, I thought, because I grew up in some small town, outside of New York City, barely a suburb. I mean, I guess you could consider Carmel a suburb because the Metro North stops there, but it's more on becoming more of a rural kind of place. It's like, I guess it's the gateway between Westchester County, which is a true suburban area, and the more rural parts of that part of New York State. So it's this sort of gateway between those two worlds. So to me, with my whole life ahead of me, looking forward to a future that was yet unwritten, living in a town like Carmel felt like living in the middle of nowhere. So that title always resonated with me. But yeah, there's some other great songs. The other song on that record that I've always loved was Cowgirl in the Sand. So yeah, I've just been kind of ruminating on those tracks in the last couple of days. And so that's been a lot of my my music appetites have been very eclectic, as you can see. I don't know, man. I got some mixed feelings about this weekend's MMA event. We got the UFC is back in action. And, I've always, especially lately, I've been very critical of Dana White. He's like buddy with Donald Trump. I feel like there's a certain level of racist points of view in the UFC, and sexist points of view as well. And I don't know, for those of you out there might want to check out at this point if you're not into fighting or anything like that, you might want to go to check out something else, because I'm going to talk about MMA for a minute. I'm not a fan of Dana White. As much as I love MMA and combat sports and boxing and wrestling and all this stuff, I love the UFC. It's like the top elite of mixed martial arts. The best fighters in the world compete there. And I think it's a great organization as far as that goes. But I just think Dana White is like the epitome of sort of that money hungry, upper level of the greed infatuated American nightmare. I feel like that's what Dana White is part of. And so anyway, of course, in the midst of a global health crisis, he's the first one to come back with an event. And tomorrow, Saturday, May 9th, we have UFC 249. And it's hard to social distance when you're fighting an MMA fight. Even the cornermen are right next to you. The referee is in the ring with you, or the octagon in this case. And the two guys that are fighting are engaged in a hand-to-hand combat struggle. And apparently there's been testing that's gone on, and all this sort of stuff. And I just don't think that there's enough intel about how this disease operates to effectively do this thing. But hey, I'm not a scientist, and if someone indicates that was due diligence done, then I guess I shouldn't have a problem with any of that. But so there's that side of the story for me. Part of me is like, man, is this, are we too soon on this? Shouldn't we wait a little bit longer? But then the fan in me takes over, and I'm like, man, this is exactly what I need. I need a live MMA event to watch, and I need my Saturday night to be what it normally is. Because, that's pretty much what I do on Saturday nights, unless I'm, playing a show or at band practice or, doing something like that. I'm usually watching fights. I'll watch Bellator on Friday. I'll watch the UFC on Saturday. If there's like a kickboxing fight, Glory Kickboxing, I'll check that out. I'll actually go to fights live, like local, kickboxing fights. I'll go to Friday night fights in New York City. Especially if I know that there's guys from my team that are on the card, I'll be there supporting. So I love fights. I love combat sports. I'm a fan. And martial arts in general is a pretty big part of what I do every day. Well, right now, obviously, I'm not training, but it's a big part of my life. So, there's a certain relief. There's like a couple of markers. There's like, okay, well, now Saturday night is a semblance of what a typical Saturday night would be for me, and that gives me comfort. It is. We'll see. I saw the card they had in Brazil, and that was the first one where they did they had no crowd, and it definitely was weird. And I imagine if you're a commentator or a fighter or a cornerman, it must seem even more bizarre than it does watching it on television. So that's the other thing. I gotta say, I am excited about it. It is a big card. It's Tony Ferguson, who's supposed to have fought Khabib Nurmagomedov, and that's the fight that they've been trying to make for years, and it just seems to be cursed. The last time they were scheduled to fight, Ferguson, it was the week of the fight. They were doing press. Ferguson tripped over some cable and injured his knee, and he was out of the fight, and Al Iaquinta stepped up. And that's the controversial championship fight. And controversial only because, Al is a great fighter, but he wasn't a contender for the title at that point. So what does it really prove? That, Khabib defeated him. And, no disrespect to Al Iaquinta. I'm actually a huge fan of his. And, McGregor had been stripped, I think, at that point of the belt. So this was to crown Khabib the king of that lightweight division. Now they were scheduled to fight, and then what happens? Global pandemic. Someday, I still hope that we'll get a chance to see Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So that's an interesting fight. Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. I'm a huge fan of Justin Gaethje. I'm a huge fan of Tony Ferguson. I think that fight is going to be amazing. I can't even pick who I think might win. I think the margin on that fight is so slim. It's like Gaethje's probably one of the hardest hitters in that division, and Tony Ferguson he's only lost at 2 fights in his entire career. So who knows? It's going to be good. We got Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz, and that's I like Henry Cejudo as a fighter. I don't like his World Wrestling Federation style of the heel persona that he's playing. I generally don't like that kind of stuff outside of I think that belongs in the WWE. And he's also not very good at it. He's not very good at being the persona that he's trying to portray. And Dominic Cruz, I love him as a fighter too. I like him even more as a commentator. I think that his next move in life is going to become one of these commentators. And I look forward. He's great. He's like one of the top analysts out there. And he hasn't fought in 4 years or something like that. He's been injured. So that should be interesting. Once again, it's a weird matchmaking exercise because Cejudo is the champ. Dominic Cruz, though a former champ, isn't even ranked. And originally, Cejudo was supposed to fight Jose Aldo, who was coming off a loss. So the whole matchmaking entanglement of this thing is very strange. But I kind of would like to see Cruz win. I think it'd be interesting to have him come in out of this long layoff, and the guy's like 35, and come in and win. I think that'd be cool if he had another run as the champion. And there's a ton of other great fights. There's Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And Rozenstruik is a guy that I'm familiar with from his career as a kickboxer in Glory. And Francis Ngannou is, of course, Francis Ngannou, like the heavyweight knockout artist, destroyer. So that could be a really good fight. It could end in 1 round or maybe not. We'll see. We got Jeremy Stevens versus Calvin Kattar. It's going to be a good one. This is another weird thing, I think, on the main card. We got Greg Hardy versus Jorgen De Castro. And Greg Hardy used to be a football player and has had quite a bit of problems in his personal life. And I think it's weird that he's on the main card. And I think this is his 4th fight in the UFC. And he's always been on the main card. He's never been on the prelims, and I just think that's a slap in the face to guys out there who actually have been working their asses off to try to rise up through the sport. But the prelims and the early prelims are actually pretty sick too. In the early prelims, the whole card's kicked off with Smiling Sam Alvey, who I always enjoy him, and versus Ryan Spann, and just gonna cherry pick a couple of fights. Vicente Luque versus Nico Price. That's also on the early prelims. And then the prelims, Uriah Hall and Jacare Souza. That's going to be a fun fight. Anthony Pettis versus Cowboy Cerrone. 2 guys that desperately need to win. I don't think either one of them are going to get cut, but both of those guys need to win. They're both coming off losses. Cowboy, I think, damn, he got knocked out by McGregor, and I think that his previous 2 fights were also knockout losses too. So he's I think it's verging on negligence for him to be fighting again at this stage right now, after coming off two knockout, 3 knockout losses in a row. But hey, man, you got to hand it to him. He's got the heart of a lion, man. But I don't know if this is the smartest thing to do with a career. And then Anthony Pettis, former champ, has also had a bit of a down streak in his career. So they both are coming off losses, and they both need to win. So that should also be a really good fight, hopefully. I always enjoy watching both of those guys fight. And I like Pettis. He's got a Taekwondo background, and, I don't know. I'm a big fan of all the flashy kicks and all that kind of stuff. And Cowboy is just Cowboy. He's the man. You got to love him. So that's my Saturday night, man. I'm looking forward to it. Life continues to be strange, and I go through these. Like the other day, I woke up and in the morning, and I was convinced that this whole thing was like some kind of New World Order population reduction conspiracy. And, kind of the days sometimes start off in these like weird mindsets. And I don't know, just trying to hang in there, trying to keep everything together, and maintain. And hopefully that we can get through this thing and get back to having normal. Well, who knows what normal is going to be, but having a more fulfilling life than being stuck at home. So once again, everyone, take care, stay healthy, stay safe, and keep it together. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Next episode, Jeff Cackside will be joining us, and we'll be talking about some of the movies we've seen. Have a good night, everyone.